I'm guessing you probably haven't heard of Magmax. Well, here's what it is. It's a shooter game that was released in arcades in 1985, and like almost every single other arcade game at the time, it got a home console port. There were a couple ports, like for the Commodore 64 and for the ZX Spectrum. But for this review, we'll be looking at the NES version. The title screen is as generic and boring as they come. Black background? Check. Score displays? Check. Copyright dates? Check. Number of player selection? Check. You get the idea. It's one of the basic Nintendo title screens that you would see a lot on the games at the time. When the game starts, we're treated to some ear-bleeding music as we watch the ship ascend from underground and into a base. Then we get control over the ship. At first, Magmax seems like a regular shoot-everything-in-sight game, but it has its twists on the formula. The first thing is the power-ups. You start off as a regular ship, but by collecting the head and the legs, you become a floating, hulking robot of death that bears a striking resemblance to Ultraman. What, you don't see it? Oh, forget it. There's also a beam, which is basically a stationary line of death in the overworld, but in the underworld, it turns the body shot into a fireball. Should I mention that whenever you collect a body part, another shot is added to your arsenal? That basically means that when you have all your body parts attached, you can shoot 3 times in a row. Speaking of which, another twist Magmax puts on the genre is the ability to go underground. By entering one of the gray holes found around the game, you'll alternate between the two, i.e. if you're underground and you touch a gray hole, you'll be sent to the overworld. In the underworld, Magmax is faced with much more enemies than there are above. Also, I don't know if it's just me or whatever, but Magmax appears to move slower in the underworld. The graphics are okay. Not great, but at least you can sort of understand what everything's supposed to be, despite how bland and boring everything looks. The enemies are stupid. They're basically all black and gray, with the exception of these little red bulbs. The only boss is a 3-headed robot dragon. Ooh, scary. I'm shaking. It's really simple to fight because it doesn't move. It just stands there like a pussy and takes whatever's thrown at it. It attacks with a fireball, which is easy to dodge, so the boss is going to get taken down soon after the battle even begins. Now, we'll talk about gameplay. Magmax can be boring at times, because most of the enemies you fight don't even move. They just stand in place and fire these generic orbs at you. But when the enemies become interesting, it can be pretty fun, especially when you're fully upgraded. The switching between worlds is a nice touch, because the lack of enemies on the overworld can get tiresome. I'm not really good at describing music, so here's the best I can do. The music is downright horrible. It just seems like they jotted random notes and called it a soundtrack. But however, the sound effects are generic, but they're good. Magmax really isn't a great game, but if you're a shooter fan, you might want to pick it up. The game doesn't have an ending, it just loops. But that's excusable, seeing that it's a score em-up released early in the NES's lifetime. It's definitely better than the other arcade ports. I mean, one look at the ZX Spectrum version, and you'll be running to play the NES one. But the game is ultimately passable. I'm Twent the Retro Guy, and until next time.